Right, so there is a lot of commentary going on today, pretty much headline news in fact, regarding a certain ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, seemingly agreed to by both sides in fact. Very, very, very good news on the face of it then, isn't it? Even with Netanyahu himself apparently backing this. And frankly, with the need for ongoing war and his desire to see it expand to try and keep himself out of court and keep himself in power, it doesn't seem to make a huge amount of sense from his perspective to agree to this. To agree to any form of ceasefire. So is there a catch? Do you smell a rat? Well, that could well be for very good reason. Where the mainstream media are implying this is all a done deal, it actually isn't at all. And when digging into some of the commentary in foreign sources and alternative media, you start to realise just how far away from a deal, a proper ceasefire this is. But then that isn't necessarily the point. In my view, this is all about a narrative that can be carried forward and got away with, where in practical terms violence and atrocity may well return very soon. A deal that may actually turn out to be a trap for Hezbollah and provide political coverage for Israel and its allies when they inevitably resume atrocities in Lebanon, and get away with it in the name of self-defense again by making it all about them in exactly the same way Gaza was made all about Hamas. There are other sticking points outstanding too, though, that should be of grave concern. This really is far from a done deal. Right, so a ceasefire came into force at 4 a.m. Lebanon time. That was 6 a.m. our time here in the UK. And you might be thinking, Damo, it's a done deal then. What are you talking about? So let's begin with what we actually know about it, in which case. For one, it is not a permanent ceasefire. It is only due to last for 60 days. The full text of the agreement is also not known. It has not been published. As much as has been told to us about it, at least at time of writing, it's apparently some 5 pages long, and the agreement is divided into 13 sections within those 5 pages. It would really be more useful to be able to actually read it than be told how long it is. But there's a reason it's not out yet, and should be pretty obvious, quite frankly, because not everyone has actually agreed to it yet, at least not at the time I was writing this. We do know about some of the key provisions, though, and feel free to spot the issues as we go. Ceasefire from 4 a.m. Lebanese time. All Israeli actions against Lebanese territory must cease, and Israeli troops will withdraw from southern Lebanon over the course of the next 60 days. Lebanon obviously wanted this done sooner. They expect it to be done within the first month. But Israel functionally have right up until the end of the ceasefire period to withdraw from southern Lebanon, upon which they could re-enter the very next day in theory. Hezbollah must withdraw from southern Lebanon completely and withdraw north of the Litani River. They must leave the UN resolution zone, so to speak, as this illustration shows. And the Lebanese army will instead deploy 5,000 troops at 33 posts along the Lebanon-Israel border. There is no published provision at this point in time for what role UNIFIL is going to have going forwards, the UN peacekeepers that we know of right now, which is also a grave concern. Hezbollah must also destroy all of their infrastructure in the south or have it done for them and must never ever rebuild. What counts as a Hezbollah military building then? Well, what is counted as a Hamas building in Gaza? It was the first thought that sprung to my mind, because it was everything, wasn't it? One of the biggest sticking points here is that although displaced Lebanese civilians may be able to return south to rebuild their homes and their lives, it's far too easy for Israel to do what they've done in Gaza and designate anything they build as Hezbollah and strike it. And they may not wait for the end of the ceasefire if they think they could get away with that. Who would put it past them, having witnessed what they have done in Gaza after all? Or would they wait the 60 days before razing homes to the ground once again when the ceasefire in its current form ends anyway? Without UNIFIL, there would be no monitoring of any of this. And given this is a UN deal, American brokered, I say American, they sent an Israeli and Amos Hochstein to negotiate it, didn't they? But UNIFIL is the UN itself in Lebanon, protecting the border, monitoring Israeli activity. They have been the eyes and ears since 1978, making sure that Israel can't get away with the same sort of dishonest claims they've often done in Gaza. Reinforcing that is the fact that Israel will now be able to complain that any monitoring they don't like by UNIFIL would be a breach, and they would then be able to take that to adjudicators for them to go over, and the adjudicators will be the US and France, two very, very pro-Israel nations. So who will they side with, I wonder? UNIFIL or Israel? Answers in the comments. I have an idea how that would go. And just to reinforce the fact that the 60-day ceasefire may not hold up anyway, any threats to Israeli security by Hezbollah would be met with military action. So we have a deal that potentially undermines UNIFIL whenever the Israelis complain about them, with the US and France virtually guaranteed, in my mind, to side with Israel and not the UN peacekeepers. I certainly hope to be proven wrong by that. I certainly hope that their loyalties lie with the UN, but I just don't see it. Israel can retaliate if it feels threatened by Hezbollah, and Hezbollah have been ordered to scuttle their own bases and withdraw from southern Lebanon completely. By the time Israeli troops withdraw, they may be able to re-enter immediately afterwards, since this widely hailed ceasefire plan has an expiry date on it. And functionally, it is unlikely to be extended, largely why Netanyahu, I think, will have agreed to it. It makes him look reasonable, especially in the way this ceasefire is being reported, and he needs to look reasonable right now with all the legislation and litigation that's going against him right now. It is functionally a watered-down version of the UN resolution that's already been in place, 1701, which states Israel cannot cross into Lebanon, seeking to rehabilitate Israel as being reasonable when actually it has cost them nothing but time on the face of this. Have Hezbollah agreed to this? Well, yes, is the short answer to that. This deal has actually been worked out between Israel and Hezbollah, we're being told. But there is, therefore, the small matter of the Lebanese government, therefore, itself agreeing to it, still to be worked out, at least at time of writing. They are meeting to discuss measures this morning, as I was writing this. I'd be surprised if they didn't accept it, and that there was a formal ceasefire in place from today, but how long it lasts from today is another matter. Netanyahu declared the deal was settled before his own cabinet had even voted on it, incidentally, though it did in fact pass. Notably, even the hard-right Bezalel Smotrich agreed to this plan in the end, having complained about it previously, making it even more a virtual certainty that this deal will not go past 60 days. He certainly wouldn't have voted for a permanent ceasefire. And his usual sidekick in all things fascist, Itamar Ben-Gvir, nailed that point on, having called this 60-day ceasefire, or a humanitarian pause as it basically is, an historic mistake in his view, and he refused to back it all the way. He voted against it, and he even issued a short statement, saying, "This is not a ceasefire. It's a return to the concept of silence for silence, and we've already seen where it leads. This agreement does not meet the goal of the war, to return the residents of the north safely home. An agreement with the Lebanese army is an agreement on ice. The Lebanese army does not have the authority at all, and certainly not the ability to overcome Hezbollah. In order to leave Lebanon, we must have our own security belt. We have already seen it, that we must not trust anyone but ourselves. Otherwise, the missiles will be launched at Manara, Avamim, Kiryat Shmona, the entire north, and the entire state of Israel. And finally, we'll have to return to Lebanon again. This is a historical mistake." He has also gone on record as saying if this ceasefire lasts past the 60-day mark, he's going to collapse the Israeli government over it, which he can, and which is why this can only ever be temporary, for as long as the Israeli government is held to ransom by far-right parties. And reinforcing the fact this may be a trap for Hezbollah is a report from Israeli spokesperson, the blood pressure boiling account of Amichai Adraei, Israel's answer to Matt Miller, who posted, "Under the direction of the political echelon, the ceasefire agreement in Lebanon went into effect this morning, Wednesday at 0400, and the IDF is operating accordingly. IDF forces are positioned in their positions in southern Lebanon. During the last hour, IDF forces identified several vehicles inside Lebanese territory carrying suspects inside a restricted area. The forces opened fire to prevent them from reaching the area, forcing them to move away. The Air Force is on alert to operate throughout Lebanon, and the air defense system is on high alert. So far, there has been no change in the Home Front Command's instructions. The IDF will act against anyone who tries to violate the ceasefire agreement and will not allow the security of the citizens of the State of Israel to be harmed." That's a statement that screams to me, I can't wait to get started again. We're going to start again at some point. But how does he even know they were suspects if they were just driven off by the IDF? The Air Force is on high alert. Why? A ceasefire has just begun. If this guy is anything to go by, I give the ceasefire days. But it also shows they're looking for an excuse to resume atrocities in Lebanon. They want to catch Hezbollah out, I think, so they can use exactly the same excuses about them as they did Hamas in Gaza when they continue atrocities once again. Lebanon is a sovereign state, after all, unlike Gaza, which is occupied territory. But if they can paint a picture of Hezbollah running the show and being out of control, Zionist media will happily convey that messaging around the world, and we've seen already where things will escalate from there. And there's another angle to this too, and that is the claim from Netanyahu that he wants to withdraw from Lebanon to deal with Iran. Hezbollah are, as we know, Iranian allies. Goodness knows we can't stop being told that. If Israel strike Iran again, and we are still awaiting an Iranian response for the last time Israel attacked them, so arguably further attacks on Iran, Israel might hope will provoke Hezbollah into attacking again. If I was Iran, I'd let this ceasefire period play out before responding now. But whatever happens at this moment in time, the Lebanese government have not yet agreed to it, as I've recorded this, and there are traps Israel are hoping Hezbollah will fall into, all whilst Israel sits in southern Israel still, no sign of getting ready to withdraw, or with their fingers seemingly still on the trigger. This is not peace, therefore. This is not a ceasefire. This is an uneasy temporary truce, and nothing more. And it's a matter of time before it gets broken one way or another. And you can bet your bottom dollar the global mainstream media will back Israel, whoever strikes first. Where some think this paves the way to peace for years, I honestly can't see it lasting 5 minutes. Not after all we've witnessed Israel do, and under the excuses they've given over the last 14 months for what they've done in Gaza. Netanyahu has also bragged about having neutered Hezbollah and reduced its forces, but of course this is just a day or two now after they launched their biggest attack to date on Israel, achieving an historic first as they did. If Hezbollah were done, why make them retreat behind the Litani River as well? Get all the details of Hezbollah's biggest strike on Israel to date in this video recommendation here, as you suggested next watch, and why Netanyahu clearly still fears them. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.